welcome to today's video. Today's my January wrap-up. I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in January. I have 11 of them. I haven't done a wrap-up since November, and it feels like it's been way long, even though it's only been 2 months. Alright, we're just going to get into this. I have quite the talking to do. First book I read was How It Feels to Float by Helena Fox. This is following our main character Elizabeth, also known as Biz. She's dealing with mental health issues, which I always love in books. So her father had passed away when she was younger, and she ends up seeing him a lot, and she kind of just wants to be with him. So she's dealing with contemplating her life because she feels like she can end up with her father. So she definitely has a lot of thoughts about her life and what she's going through with herself. This is YA. Biz is in high school, and she has a friend that she's very close to, and then there's this new guy that shows up at her school, so she kind of befriends him too. With her seeing her dad a lot after he had passed, she just wants to talk to him and be with him. And then one day he does disappear, so she's kind of freaking out a little bit about that, and she's trying to do anything she can to get him to show back up. And that's basically the gist of the story. I personally felt like this didn't really touch on the mental health aspects as much as I was expecting it to. Like, you knew they were there, but it didn't really go in depth to explain anything really. And I feel like there wasn't as much on it as there could have been, or what I would have liked there to been. I don't really feel like there was a stronger plot until the last 100 pages of this book. So getting to that point was a little rough for me. I just felt like it was a little all over the place. The scenes happened, but they didn't really give anything to the story or a plot necessarily. So as they were happening, you were kind of questioning why it was important, and then it would just jump to another scene. And it was kind of back and forth, like timeline wise. It just seemed a little all over the place to me and kind of choppy, and I didn't really get to connect with any of the characters. I don't feel like they were written in any depth. This was unfortunately a 1-star for me, and I hated starting the year off with a 1-star. I know that like you should DNF books when you aren't liking them, but I'm kind of glad I didn't with this one because it picked up during the end, but that ending didn't really do much to bring up my rating in any way. So unfortunately this one did not hit for me. And then we have With Love from Cold World by Elise Thompson. This is the first book I have read by this author. She also wrote Love in the Time of Serial Killers, which I know is decently popular, I think, and I actually picked that one up after I read this one. This book is set in wintertime, but it's set in Florida, so you're having that warm weather. It's not really Christmas feeling, but these two characters work at Cold World, which is essentially like a makeshift winter wonderland type place, so that way people in the warmer climates can go here and do winter activities, because they can't get that if they go outside in the Florida heat. This follows Lauren and Asa. Lauren is the bookkeeper at Cold World, and then Asa has worked there for a very long time, and he loves Cold World. He loves working there. This is kind of like starting out as a little workplace enemies to lovers, but it's not too serious. Their boss actually brings both of them into her office. She's kind of putting them into a little competition with each other. The boss's son actually works there too, but he's not like in Cold World. He kind of does background higher up stuff. So all three of them, their boss is trying to throw them together into a competition to see who can come up with good ideas to change Cold World, because they're getting that traction in their customer flow, but it's not as much as they would like it to be. They want more. They want Cold World to be a place where people want to go for special events, or it can kind of be more of a tourist attraction. So they have to come up with something that can change Cold World in a better way and bring more people in, and they can decide to work together or not. It's just a very fun story of them trying to help out Cold World and give it some more life. I really love this book. I think their relationship was amazing. I love the romance in this. I like the two characters a lot. There was a lot of personality between all the characters in this book, even the side characters. I just think it was really well written. I liked the writing a lot, and there wasn't anything that I disliked about this book. So I did give this one a 5 stars. I would recommend this. I know it's not necessarily winter time for much longer, but if you have not read this, I would definitely pick it up. I just found myself continuously wanting to pick this up. I don't read in the mornings ever, but I woke up early the one day and I couldn't fall back asleep, and I was like, I'm just gonna read this book because I want to get further into it, which never happens for me, so that's saying something. But it had great banter, of course, great characters like I said, and it definitely deals with heavier topics too. These characters have a lot of backstory, especially Asa. He has a lot of backstory with his family that he's going through, and I think it touches on those subjects very well. So I really appreciated that. The next 3 books I'm going to talk about, I have a reading vlog on this. This was my first episode of finishing every series that I'm in the middle of, so I'm just going to touch on these next 3 very lightly because I gave in-depth thoughts in that video. First, I have Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is book 5 of Chestnut Springs and the final book, which I'm so sad about because I love Chestnut Springs so much. This is Bo and Bailey's story. Bo is in the military and he is back now. We've got glimpses of him in the other books, and Bailey is actually the Eaton's neighbor, which is Beau's family, and she has dealt with a rough life. Her family is not good people, so she's trying to make her own name for herself and not have her family's name, because people are obviously comparing her to her brothers and her parents, and she doesn't want that, so she's just trying to get out of that. So Beau comes back. He's kind of lonely, and Bailey works at a bar, so he goes to the bar. He ends up going there pretty much every day. These two start to form their connection with each other. Beau kind of wants his family off at his back, and obviously Bailey wants to make a different life for herself, so they end up doing a fake engagement, and their relationship just goes from there. This one, I was disappointed. I will say, I think this one did not hit like the other 4 books in the series at all for me. I just don't think that this one really had a plot to it. I think it was mainly just focused on Beau and Bailey's romance, which even in romance books I like there to be a stronger plot, and the other books in this series definitely had that, and I love them so much. Unfortunately, I did not like this one. I did give it a 2-star. I just wanted more out of it, and I think I was expecting more because I love the other books so much, so I am very sad about this one, but I am still happy to have completed this series. It's still probably my favorite romance series that I've read so far, so even though I did rate this a 2-star, I still would recommend every single book in this series. I love this world and the writing. I love the banter between the characters. I love their connection, the found family. Definitely recommend this series if you have not started. Next, I read Cross by Emily McIntyre. This is book 5 of the Never After series, and the final book currently. I don't know if there's any more coming out. This is about Cade and Amaya. Cade is a priest and Amaya is technically a stripper, so obviously they have very different jobs. But this is a dark romance, so Cade is seen as our villain. This is a Hunchback of Notre Dame reimagining. It was very interesting. The plot line, if I had read the back of this book and I hadn't read the other books in this series, I would have never picked this book up because it just isn't a plot line that I would necessarily go for. But being as it is a part of the series that I've already read books for, I was excited to pick this up, and I was iffy with the rest of the books in the series. There were 2 that I really liked and 2 that I wasn't really liking, so I was waiting to see which side this would fall on. But Cade being the villain and being a priest is very interesting, and I really liked that whole storyline. And then Amaya is literally just the sweetest person. I loved her, and her relationship with her and her little brother is the best thing in the entire world. I love reading about it. But Amaya has a very dark past, so does Cade. They both have very dark pasts. You're basically just getting Cade's little villain story and Amaya's life, and she's such a good person, and I really love her as a main character. Cade I wasn't too keen on. He didn't really do much for me, but I still really enjoyed this story. I love the writing in this. I think her writing just grew so much with this book compared to the other ones. Even though the storyline wasn't necessarily for me, the writing kept me very intrigued in this, and I'm happy that I picked this one up. I did end up giving this a 4-star. There was like a slow point kind of 2/3 of the way through the book, but other than that, I was very intrigued with what was happening and where the story was gonna go. So yeah, I didn't really have that connection with Cade, but I definitely had that connection with Amaya and her little brother and her storyline. If you haven't read any of the books in this series, I would definitely pick up this one, Hooked, and Scarred. Those are my 3 favorites, and these are not interconnected in any way, so you can literally just pick up one and be completely fine reading it as a standalone. Alright, and then lastly for the series video, I have Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This is the 3rd book in the Renegades trilogy, and this is also the final one. This book was so good. So basically the whole concept of Renegades is the Renegades are superheroes, and then you have the anarchists who are known as the villains. Our main character Nova is a part of the anarchists, but she is disguising herself as a renegade. She's kind of going on like a little spy mission, trying to get information from them in order for the anarchists to take over. That whole concept is just very interesting in itself, but this whole trilogy has such fun characters. It has such fun concepts. Everybody has their own unique superpower. Any like trauma that they had in the past, that's kind of how their superpower came to be. So it was very interesting to read about how everybody got their powers. But you're basically just following the whole fight between the anarchists and the renegades, and this is the wrap up. There was a crazy sort of plot twist at the end of this, and I love this one so much. This was my favorite out of the series. It was so good. You have to read the series if you have not already. I just think, oh god, this book was, ow. I did this a 5 stars, and the whole series for me was like 4.5 stars, very high up there. So definitely a good read. Okay, and then I read The Coldest Winter by Brittany Cherry. This book follows Milo and Starlet. This one starts off with a one-night stand between the two. They're at a college party. Basically, okay, so this book starts off with Starlet and her roommate. They're very close friends. I love the whole connection between them two. Starlet has her boyfriend, and I think it's either her birthday or their anniversary, but they're going out to dinner, and she actually thinks that he's gonna propose to her that night. So she goes to his dorm room, and then there's another girl in there, so he's cheating on her, and she obviously does not take that, so she immediately gets out, and then she's super upset about it. Her roommate is basically just telling her, like, just get out there, do something fun, ignore him, like, just do something for yourself and have a little fun, because she's very reserved in the ways of like not being a party girl or like, you know, that kind of outgoing personality. She's just ready to do that finally. She goes to this party, meets Milo, they have their night together, and then they don't talk after that. Some time passes and she is a student teacher at this high school and Milo is there, which I know that sounds a little sketchy. Milo is a student at the high school. He is 19 and she is, I believe, 22. I'm not a fan of age gaps, but this one is very minimal. It's just in the sense that he's still in high school and she's a student teacher. I know the concept sounds a little weird, but it's actually not that bad. This one, it's a very sad book. Milo and Starlet are both dealing with the loss of a parent, and they find that connection with each other because they're talking about it. They're trying to open up to each other. So obviously after they see each other and realize like, okay, we're student teacher student relationship, they definitely try to hide it, but they just have this really strong connection to each other, and it's kind of hard for them to stay away from each other. But I really enjoyed their romance. I think it was very sweet. I think these two characters are fantastic. I just didn't really like all the sadness in this book, which if you want a sad book, definitely read this, but things just kept happening to Milo. It was just really unfortunate to read about. I think it was done really well. Just the way that their issues were written, it was written in such a strong way, a strong emotional way, and I really enjoyed that. I did enjoy this book a lot. I just didn't get that after connection to the book, I think, and I mean, I loved it when I was reading it. There were some moments where I wasn't really caring for where the story was going, but overall, I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving this a 3-star because I was kind of in the middle a little bit. I just think it's a very sweet romance, and it's one of those romances that go deeper and it definitely means a lot. So I would recommend this, but I just didn't get that complete connection to the story. And then I finally read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I've had this for a few months now and I was just feeling it, so I picked it up and started reading it, and it was very interesting. As much talk as there is about this book, I didn't really know what it was about going into it. Basically all I knew was that these two people, or these two young adults, are working at this kind of news press company. They were writing letters to each other. That's pretty much all I knew. But this is set in a time of war. It's very kind of magical realism. There's not too much magic or too much depth to the magic, which I think worked out very well. So this is set back in the late 1800s. This is during a war between these two gods, this god and this goddess. We have our two main characters, Iris and Roman. So Iris's brother is actually going to fight in this war, and she's very upset about that because she really loves her brother, and it's very rough for her. And then her mother is also dealing with issues. It's just her and her mother now. Iris is basically just going to work every day, writing articles, and then she has this rivalry with her coworker Roman. They're both competing for the columnist position, and they kind of just bicker a lot, and they have that little rivalry between each other, which is perfect. Iris is trying to reach her brother, so she's writing letters to him. She ends up just sending one of them into her closet, and one ends up popping back out, and it's written by someone else. She's going this whole time not knowing who she's writing to. And then I don't want to give too much away because I liked the fact that I didn't really know too much about this book. All I will say is that I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 4.5 stars, and I think the whole magical elements were very cozy. And despite this being set in a war and having that dark story, the magic and the characters just made it feel so like comfortable, and I really enjoyed that. I just think it was very well written. I did love the connection between all the characters in this book, but my only thing was that I didn't feel as much for Roman and Iris as I think a lot of other people did. And I don't know if it's just because they were young and I can't really get a connection with like a young love anymore, but I am excited to pick up the second book. Literally, I was like 100 some pages into this, and I told myself, I'm like, I have to go to Barnes and pick up Ruthless Vows. There were so many good quotes in here too. The letters between them, first of all, characters, amazing writers, love their letters. But there was just so many sections in this book where you just read it and it does something, like it makes you feel. And I love that. It was kind of a book that gave me the feelings that I used to get when I was in love with reading in middle school and high school. And that's what I want from books, and this book gave me that feeling. I love it for that, and I'm so happy that I finally picked this one up. Next we have Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is the book that follows Icebreaker. This is Russ's and Aurora's story, which I don't remember too many of the characters in Icebreaker. I feel like there were so many, and there's so many characters in this one too, so it's a little hard for me to follow all of them. So Russ and his roommates and the boys are throwing a last kind of little hurrah party before summer break, and they all go their separate ways for summer. So Aurora and her friend end up coming to this party, and she meets Russ for the first time. They're instantly attracted to each other. Russ is this very more of a reserved, quiet type of guy, and Aurora is very extroverted, outgoing, and she is very social. They're pretty much opposites, but they both have this attraction to each other, and then they end up having a one-night stand. They don't say anything after, and then they go their separate ways. And then they're both actually summer camp counselors at the same summer camp, so they show up, see each other, and they're like, all right, this could be rough. It's just them going through their summer camp journey and developing their relationship. I was kind of disappointed in this book. Everything happened plot-wise in like the first 60 pages, and then after that it was just summer camp activities. There really wasn't much to keep me wanting to read the book because everything like juicy was happening in the beginning very quickly, and then after that it was kind of just them at summer camp doing random things. At that point it kind of became like a comfort read if you were comforted by it, but I unfortunately was not. I just kind of didn't see the point in the rest of the book. They had a lot of sweet moments with each other, but I just also didn't really feel a strong connection with them. I liked Russ a lot. He's a very sweet person, very down to earth and very caring. I think that he loved Aurora. Why is that so hard to say? I think he loved Aurora for who she is as a person, both physically, mentally, pretty much everything, but I kind of got the feeling that Aurora wasn't really liking Russ too much or in the same way that he liked her. I think that she was mostly liking him in a physical sense, and I just wish that I had gotten more on her side with liking Russ. But yeah, I didn't really enjoy the whole non-plot type writing in this. I really love the concept because I love summer camp settings for some reason. I don't know why. I've never been to a summer camp besides band camp, but like I love summer camp settings in books. So I think that's why I kept going with this one, because I did like the activities, but I just wanted more from the plot. I did give this a 1.5 stars just because there were those sweet moments between them two, but I don't think the connection was there between them. I just wanted more out of the story. And then these last three were kind of just quick reads for me. These were books that I've had on my TBR that I know that if I didn't get to, they would probably sit there for a while. I spent the last week of the month kind of picking books off of my TBR that I have been pushing off, and it actually kind of turned out good, so I would like to do that more often. First up, I have Mother Knows Best by Serena Valentino. This is a Disney villain origin story, and I was very interested in the concept of these because you're getting that backstory with the villain, which you never get in Disney movies. It's always about, you know, the princess or the hero. And this is Mother Gothel from Tangled. I love Tangled. It's my comfort movie, and I love Rapunzel. I'm not a huge Disney fan, but Tangled just does something for me, and I love that movie so much. There's multiple books in this series. I believe this is the 5th one. I don't know if the stories are legit or if this is just this author's kind of depiction of the story or what they made up for these villains' backstories. So I can't give too much information on that. I don't know how legit these are or if these villains even have backstories. I don't know the original story of Rapunzel and everything. So I kind of just took this as from after watching the movie and knowing Mother Gothel from the movie. I'm not making any sense. Anyway, I read this book. Let's talk about it. It was interesting because I didn't know Mother Gothel would have sisters. She does have sisters. Her mother was very evil. I like the writing in this. It's obviously very YA feeling, but it was very whimsical and magical, and I did enjoy it a lot. And at first I was very interested by what was happening and I was loving it, but then these 3 other witches come in, and I guess that they're in all the other books, and I was reading the reviews on this one, and a lot of people were complaining about these other 3 witches coming in because they just say that they kind of ruined the story, which I did get that feeling, honestly. I think it should have just been focused on Gothel, her 2 sisters, and her mom. It was that way in the beginning, which is why I was loving it, but I did feel myself kind of drifting away from it as soon as these other 3 witches came in, because I feel like they kind of overtook the story and then we weren't getting too much on Gothel. Even after reading this, Gothel just doesn't seem like a villain to me. I don't think she ever seemed like a villain to me, and it was very weird because the way that she was with her sisters and everything, like she cared for them very much, so it's strange to me how in the future she treats Rapunzel, because she has that like family element with her sisters and that care for them, and I just don't see how she could treat Rapunzel in the way that she does. The end of this book does line up with the movie, which is super cool, but there were different timelines and plot points that weren't like the movie. I think I would have just liked it to work out in that sense, but it didn't, and I just didn't feel like we got the Gothel that we got in the movie. I'd give this one a 2-star, but if you like Disney and you're interested in the villains, I would recommend reading these because they do seem very cool. But I think that's probably the only one I'm gonna read because I'm not too big on other Disney movies. And then I read Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I actually started this years ago. I think I only read a couple pages and then I stopped and just never picked it up again. But it revolves around a main character named Guy, and he's a fireman. Basically, in this world, books are seen as taboo. These firefighters, their job is to not necessarily put out fires that start, but it is to start fires of people who own books. If you have books, it's illegal and you get your house burned down if anybody finds out that you have books in your house. Guy is one of those firefighters who have to take part in burning down people's houses. This book definitely goes through a lot of questioning with Guy himself and his thoughts on whether or not it's ideal to completely get rid of books. So he's having those feelings. Obviously those aren't good thoughts in this world because it's seen as a negative thing. He's kind of trying to find that balance between whether or not these people in charge are actually doing the right thing by completely getting rid of these books. It's written in the 50s. It's set after 2022 because that was the year that was mentioned at some point in this book, which was a little confusing at the beginning because it was definitely written like the past, like in the 50s, and you could tell that from the writing. But then there was talks of like this mechanic hound dog thing, which was essentially a robot. So at first it was kind of confusing trying to figure out when this was set, but once you got that like 2022, it was like, okay, now it makes sense, this is set in the future. It was very interesting to see how a book written in the past was kind of viewing the future and what it would be like, but now we're in that point because it's definitely like our world is not like this. Obviously we still have books, we have plenty of books, but obviously we do have books that are trying to be banned. The thing that I enjoyed most about this was seeing where our world is now compared to where the world was written in this book. I did enjoy this a lot. I gave this a 3 stars, but I think that the message just didn't hit like it would have in the past, maybe just because we're living in this world now and we have a ton of books and we have access to so much information now. This being written in the 50s, I can see why it became such a popular book, but now since we have access to so much stuff, I just don't think that the message is really there as much as it could have been in the past. That was really the only thing, but I did enjoy this. It's pretty short. It's like 150 pages, so 3 stars. And then lastly, I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, if I'm saying that correctly. I actually just finished this yesterday. I really like this. This was such like a little magical, whimsical story. So basically there is this coffee shop in Tokyo. It's kind of in this basement. It's very tiny. This book is split up into 4 different sections. So it's basically 4 different stories of people coming to this shop, and it is known that if you go into this coffee shop that you can travel back in time. So a lot of people come there to travel back in time, but there's a lot of rules that you have to go through and follow in order to actually go back, and that puts off a lot of people. They end up not doing it. But with these 4 different parts of the stories, it's split up into these 4 different times where people actually are willing to go back and follow these rules. So this definitely is more of a comfort book, and I really enjoyed it. I just liked the little hint of magic in here, and I really liked the characters. Each different part of the story did have a connection between the characters that you've met, and you meet more characters as you go along, and then they have their connection with each other, and it all just ends up connecting in the end. And I really enjoyed it, so I did give this a 4 stars. And if you have not read this yet, I would recommend it if you're looking for just a quick cozy read. It's pretty short. I got through this really fast. I think it's cute, and I want to pick up the other books. I think there's 4. I think the other books are pretty much just different stories of people using this coffee shop to go through time. But yeah, I liked it. It was a very simple, quick, cozy read. So that's the last book that I read in January. Very happy. My goal for this year, I did set at 120, so I need to average about 10 books a month, which I feel like is normally what I do, but for some reason I feel like I read so much this month. There was a week or so in there where I didn't really read at all. I'm surprised that I still got 11 books in. I know the last 3 were pretty short and quick reads, but I don't know, I feel like I had a good reading month. I'm glad that I'm finally getting books off of my TBR. It feels really good, so I'm gonna keep doing this, just kind of mood reading, picking out some books on my TBR that have been there for a while and reading those. February I do kind of want to do quite a bit of reading vlogs though, so I might have to not necessarily mood read. With that being said, that is my wrap up for January. I think I might start saying my favorite book of the month. I am doing this little book bracket thing in my reading journal where I put my favorite read of the month, and then at the end I will kind of just figure out my favorite read of the year. So I think for this month, my favorite was Supernova. And yeah, that's that. So I will see you in my next video, whatever that may be. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you have a good day. See ya.